Welcome to This Week in BJJ, the only show running the gamut of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and running it live every Friday night.
Hello and welcome to This Year in BJJ. Why do I say this year? Because it's the end of the year. Welcome to This Week in BJJ. I'm Budo Jake, joined as usual with Budo Dane. Dane, can you believe the year is almost over?
I was actually thinking about that earlier, that I was, kind of like mentally going over everything that happened this year. It seemed to go by in a flash.
Yeah, we've got a lot to talk about today. We're going to tell you all the big news from Jiu-Jitsu and from the Budo side of things. So much to go over. But how about you, Dane? Was it a good year for you?
It was an awesome year for me. A lot happened, and yet it seemed to like blend in with everything else. So there seemed to be like segments of the year, right? Because the Pans was the largest Pans ever, and that was really cool. And I was doing a bunch of stuff around then. And then we went next to the Worlds, right? Bunch of things happened with me personally, jiu-jitsu wise, and then that happened. And then you have the Buchecha match, and you have all of that, and you're like, oh, that was incredible. Then we had a great Nogi Worlds, and then the Metamoris happened in there. So, man, it's almost as if we fit 2 years of content into a single year.
Yeah. On the training side of things, I think I can speak for both of us in saying that we trained a lot more in 2012 than 2011.
Okay, so answer me this. Do you think you got more mileage this year than you have in previous years?
Yeah, absolutely. I competed a lot more in 2012, so I think that's a big learning experience, competing. And whenever you compete, you're going to train harder to prepare for it. So, it was, as far as training goes, it was an incredible year.
So if you could pick one thing that's not necessarily increased, that like one thing that you think has changed the most in your BJJ, what would you say it is?
I guess, doing all the different shows that we do, we get exposed to so many different guys and so many different games that most people's academies have guys doing certain techniques. Mm-hmm. For example, at Gracie Baja, we don't get a lot of people playing elaborate open guard, spider guards, de la Hiva too much. But going around training with all these other guys, I got pushed into doing that more. And now it's a much bigger part of my game. So it's, I would say, doing things that I'm not comfortable with got a lot more play in 2012.
Right. For me, and then this kind of plays into what you said, not necessarily inverting or the berimbolo, but the fact, I think for me most of all is the realization that there's that third dimension to jiu-jitsu. It felt almost as if I was only worried about this plane, and then adding the berimbolo made me realize that there's the z-axis, there's the whole third plane. Yep.
You and I have drilled the berimbolo and inversions a lot, and I think the rest of the world has too.
Right.
The berimbolo really made a big splash in 2012.
Would you call it technique of the year?
Sure, if you have to pick one.
Breakout technique of the year, would you say berimbolo?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, I'd go with that.
Third guest of the show today is the Sierra Nevada Celebration Fresh Hop Ale. I'm usually not a big IPA fan, but this one's pretty nice.
This is a really nice one.
Yeah, nice seasonal beer. Before we get into recapping 2012, last week on the show we had Shanji Barrow, great guy. I had so much fun training with him after the show too. And we had a contest on YouTube for, the question was, how many times did he fight Roger Gracie? And the number was 8. A lot of people were guessing 7 and 9, but 8 times. That's a lot for a guy to face, for two guys to face off. Right. So 8 was the correct answer. We picked a winner at random. His name is, at least his YouTube name is Nicholas Hand. So Nicholas, if you're watching, please message us on YouTube. Let us know your address and whether you want the DVD or the Blu-ray version of Shanji's instructional. Congratulations, Nicholas. So let's run through some of the big news topics of 2012, Dane. First one was our friend Roilly, Gracie. He received his coral belt back in January. Hickson and Holker Gracie gave it to him. You haven't trained with Roilly at all, have you?
No, I've met him at events, but I haven't trained with him. And I really want to, because not that, the other Gracies aren't. He seemed to be the more competition-minded of, that portion of the family. So I really want to get his perspective on things.
Yep, and he's a smaller guy, so he does things a little bit differently. He has a great guard. I had a private lesson from him in his home in San Diego, and just an incredible guy, very knowledgeable.
Right.
If I think about the coral belts that I've rolled with, it's been Roilly and Carlos Gracie Jr. How about you?
Carlinhos is pretty much the only one I've rolled with. When you had your private with Roilly, what was one of the things that struck you about his instruction, if anything?
That would be the fact that he's not the guy that you expect to see berimboloing and doing things very up to date. But even though he might not do those things, he has answers for them. The old adage that basics are the most important. He has very fundamental ways of smashing everything.
Right. That's cool. He acknowledges new techniques.
Yeah, absolutely. Next up is Tedede, one of the most influential guys in jiu-jitsu. You talk about some of the most popular guys in the sport today, and a lot of them learned from Tedede. And he had some issues with mental issues and drug issues, but he returned to competition this year, which is a very welcome event. He competed in Mexico City, and we showed some videos in the past on the show, and they're also on YouTube, but he made pretty quick work of his opponents.
Yeah, it was everything, maybe not everything, but is what you would expect Tedede's return to look like. He looked relaxed, he looked smooth, and you're like, okay, here comes Tedede. And there's almost that question is he going to disappoint? Has he been out of the game too long? And the answer was no.
Right. I've heard his personality is very different than what it was before, but looking at him competing, looks the same to me. Sharp.
That's awesome.
Next up was the Mendez brothers. They opened up their Art of Jiu-Jitsu Academy in Costa Mesa, California, very close to our office here. And we actually went to the grand opening.
We did.
What did you think of that?
I thought it was the closest I'll ever get to being inside of a cloud. Mm-hmm. It's all white. Walls are white. Mat's white. You're required to wear a white gi. With the lighting, it almost glows. It's hard to explain, to describe this, but at night when the lights are on and you see from the outside, it literally glows like a Morgan Freeman movie. It's awesome.
Yeah. And both Guillermo and Hoffa Mendes, both world champions, both teach out of that academy. And I understand the academy is doing really well. They seem to focus a lot on the kids program.
Why do you think that is?
I think they started training at a very young age. So I think they know the value of jiu-jitsu training to kids. And also I think that you can influence kids easier than adults. A lot of the adult students didn't start with them. They came from other academies. So I think they like an empty cup, so to speak.
Yeah, I was going to say, I wonder if that push was to create like a true homegrown, like if they get a black belt or a champion, they have the perfect control variable. Like we've had him since he was 4, since he was a little kid. Like we've trained him. We brought him up from a sprout. Right.
And they're always posting pictures of their kids winning at tournaments. It seems like they're always getting gold medals.
Right. Also doing homework.
Yeah. Well, a number of their students are actually homeschooled, so they just train 2-3 times a day, every day. What a life.
Angry. That's just anger.
Next up was the BJJ Expo. You and I went to that, Dane. That was an interesting event. They had some great matches there. Right. Kaio and Jeff Glover had a great match. Most people were surprised that Glover pulled out the win on that. A number of other good matches. But the surprising thing was what?
Nick Diaz, or the surprising not thing, right? Nick Diaz was supposed to fight Braulio Stima. Braulio, I know because I'd seen him around, made a heck of an effort to drop weight. He dropped 20 pounds in one night, showed up on weight, and Nick Diaz didn't show up. Apparently, from a statement from Cesar Gracie, if I remember this correctly, there were some disagreements as to whether or not Braulio had fought MMA, because Nick said he wanted to compete against someone, but someone who wasn't going to do or wasn't doing MMA, because they didn't want, to make a name, him to build his career off of Nick. And so Nick got angry when he found out that Braulio's had long-standing MMA aspirations. Is that about right?
That's what I heard too. It seems like a weird reason to me. Mm-hmm. It's like you're signed up for a grappling super fight, just do it. But they also mentioned there were some issues with the promoter. I don't know what the actual deal was, but suffice to say, the main event didn't happen. That was a big disappointment.
That said, though, I had a couple friends that did the seminars during the day, and they all spoke very highly of the seminars. Mm-hmm. And they had some big names there. It was Robert Drysdale, and there was a couple other names I don't recall right now. But my friend Evan mentioned the Robert Drysdale seminar particularly and said it was really good.
Yeah, can't go wrong with Drysdale.
Right.
Next big news topic of the year was Hoffa Mendes submitting Cabrinha at the Pan 2012 tournament. They had fought, I think, 3 times prior to that, if I'm not mistaken. And this one was kind of an exclamation point that Hoffa put on it. And it makes me wonder how much effect, how much of a factor was Cabrinha, the fact that Cabrinha had to spend so much time developing his school.
Right. Because we saw we saw in the Worlds that Carino was very careful not to make that same mistake. Kind of left his arm out there, and that's how Hoffa grabbed it. I can't help but think, because we saw him at Nogi Worlds 2011, and he decided at the last minute to do it, and he dropped a lot of weight, and he did well, but man, when he was weighing in, he didn't look great. So I think I can't help but think or confirm that, man, his school is probably taking a lot of time.
Yeah. And now Hoffa Mendes has his own school, so I'm curious to see how that's going to affect Hoffa's performance in 2013 as well.
Yeah, it's hard to say.
But for sure, when you can't just focus on yourself, on your own training, when you have to deal with the money and the business side of things, that's going to take some focus away.
And the other thing too is it's not just the first 2 months of having a school, right? Knowing as a business owner, it's the first couple of years are a big steady uphill climb, right?
Yeah, for sure. And it's not just putting in hours; it's a mental stress.
Right.
You got to worry about your investment.
I can't help but think that's something that weighs on you, and you almost don't realize it, right? That like acute stress that kind of mounts in the background.
Yeah. Meanwhile, your opponents are doing nothing but training every day.
Right. And it's a testament to BJJ competition now, right? Where things like little stresses in the background is enough of a distraction to cost you matches, to cost you titles.
Yeah. Even at blue belt level, you got guys full-time training.
Right. Well, Edwin, right?
Yeah, for sure. Next up was a very sad topic. That is the loss of Osvaldo Paqueta. He was a 9th degree red belt student and best friend of Carlson Gracie. And he's known for having the world's largest jiu-jitsu and MMA video collection that he shot with his very own camera in Brazil. And he passed away this year, so that was a sad loss. I'm wondering what's going to happen to his collection.
Right. That's something, I mean, just for posterity, I would hope would get digitized in some way, shape, or form. If not to sell, just to have, or at least have a library of it. Because really, I'm sure he has absolute artifacts of BJJ and MMA history. And when he was shooting a lot of those videos, BJJ and MMA were probably much more closely linked, almost unintertwinable.
Right.
Yeah.
And all that stuff's just on tape, probably
Right.
eroding day by day. So I hope somebody out there is able to salvage all that stuff. Now, the next thing was another sad incident, Dane. Why don't you walk us through what happened at the 2012 Worlds?
So Andre Gaval, one of his purple belts was competing, and in retrospective, I heard there were issues with other matches, other team members of Andre's, other students of Andre's before, but I only saw this part. Andre Gaval was coaching one of his students, and his student's opponent pulled a knee bar, and which are illegal at purple belt, and the ref, called the match a loss for his student, saying that he submitted by knee bar. Andre got very, very upset that this occurred, and began yelling that this is not right. These aren't legal at purple belt, and eventually he grew so heated that he started climbing over the barricade at the Worlds 2012. Needless to say, the officials of the IBJJF took exception to this. This is a safety issue. This is an obvious safety issue, in addition to the fact that Andre was very, very angry. So finally diffused the situation, and when the dust settled, the IBJJF had declared that Andre Gaval was disqualified from competing at the 2012 Worlds, which was a huge blow and started quite a bit of a controversy. So there were talks that he tried to smooth things out, but he ultimately didn't end up being able to compete.
Yeah, that was really sad. Andre is one of the biggest names in the sport. Everybody was looking forward to seeing him at the event. I understand when you're coaching your students, you have a lot of passion for what they're doing out there. And from a lot of the coaches I've talked to, they feel even more emotion for their students out there than they would feel for themselves if they were competing. So I can understand, especially when there's possibly a bad call. I haven't heard the ref side of that story, but it certainly looked like it was a bad call. So I can understand getting upset about it, but rules are rules. You can't go running up in the ref's face.
So let me ask you: do you think there's an asterisk to the medium heavy? So Homolo has that has that title right now, the 2012 World's Medium Heavy title. Do you think there's an asterisk that because he didn't have to compete against Andre?
No, I think you compete against whoever's there,
Right.
and what happens. And if you want to talk about Andre versus Homolo, they did fight at the IBJJ Pro League,
Right.
and Homolo won.
And I can't help but think that was a bit of the, the world's match that didn't happen.
Yeah.
But Homolo looked great in that match. So.
Right.
I mean, they both did, but Homolo did his job.
And also, I wanted to add that Galvao later said that he knew he was wrong, and he accepted the punishment and everything. So everything's smooth, and I'm sure that'll never happen again.
Right.
Next news topic was from our friends the Bourdains, Otavia and Anthony Bourdain. You guys out there might know Anthony's show No Reservations, a great travel and food show. His wife competed in Brazil. So there's a special No Reservations episode that took place in Brazil, and we got to see Tavia Bourdain competing at the Gracie Baja Academy in Rio. And that was nice to see jiu-jitsu on the big screen.
Yeah, no, that was definitely awesome. And I got to give it to Otavia. She trains like crazy, and she's big about promoting the sport. And I've actually interacted with her on Twitter at the Worlds and the Pans. So she's not just making a token effort; she's actually legitimately doing the sport. Yeah,
for sure. And she says she hopes to compete a lot more in 2013. So it's good to have celebrities competing. Brings more spotlight on the sport. So thank you, Otavia and Anthony. Next up was the IBJJF Hall of Fame. This is something that the IBJJF has been wanting to do for a while, and that is honoring the legends of our sport. So at the 2012 Worlds, there was a whole list of names, I think about 8 people or so, that got inducted into the Hall of Fame, men and women. And there was a video for it that played in the Long Beach Pyramid. And I just thought that was really nice to see some of these guys get the recognition that they definitely deserve.
Yeah, it was interesting to see the names, and I think one of the best things about this is that it's kind of like a hallmark to people in the past, well, who will soon be the past, who are really important to the sport, and it's a way to keep the history alive. And I think that was highlighted in maybe a less fortunate way really well with the inclusion of Haleta. I don't think he got the response that I would have expected from the crowd.
Yeah, I mean, guys that aren't competing, certainly the guys that are still competing today are a lot more in the minds of people than the people that don't. And Haleta is one of those guys that competed 10, 15 years ago, but we haven't seen him recently.
But I think that stresses the importance of having something like the Hall of Fame where you say, no, Haleta, trust us. By points and by victories, Haleta is somebody that is a name that you should know.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And some people were saying, like, how can it be a Hall of Fame if Hickson's not in there? Well, let me remind you that there are guidelines, and what makes an IBJJF Hall of Fame is the number of gold medals. I think it was 4 that you'd have to be inducted. And Hickson, I don't believe, has any IBJJF medals. Doesn't mean he's not, one of the best. Doesn't mean he hasn't competed, but hasn't competed in the IBJJF Worlds to qualify. Next up, Henzo's live tweet drama.
Oh, man, this was awesome.
Henzo is addicted to Twitter. If you follow Henzo on Twitter, you probably might not see anybody else in your feed because Henzo tweets all the time. And he oftentimes has interesting things to say. This one certainly was. He was in New York walking around, and someone attempted to mug him. And he basically, what happened, Dane?
Okay, so let me tell my story because it's important that the world knows this. So I wake up that morning that this event occurred, and I, of course, as everyone does, bleary-eyed, I start checking Twitter. It's not just me. So I start looking, and I come up to my hands hurt. Can't help but look at him. The other one took off running. Not much of a friend, chicken. I can still see him. He looks. And usually, Henzo's tweets are a bit more succinct and make more sense. And so I start scrolling up, and I still have no explanation for this because it's 7 a.m. And I'm going through this thing, and I remember I get through the second or third tweet, and I'm like, holy crap, Henzo just live tweeted his own mugging. So the short story is that Henzo was walking around in New York at like 2 or 3 a.m. I don't ask questions when it comes to Henzo. And he noticed these 2 guys were following him. And as you can see from the tweets, it goes really poorly for them. Now, and I mentioned this in a past show, the best part about this is my mental image of Henzo like walking and tweeting this at the same time. And at some point, apparently he's hiding in the bushes waiting for these guys. And I can only imagine he's like, hold on, this is going to be great. Gonna go get the guys. And then just all of a sudden, Renzo Gracie pops out and grabs the second guy. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jake, but only Renzo.
Yeah. Well, High-End would have done the same thing.
Yeah, I don't think he would have tweeted it, though.
Right. Yeah, what bad luck for these poor muggers out there to try to mug Renzo Gracie. But answer me this. Is it smart to publicly document the fact that you're beating up guys in the street?
I would go with no. If OJ taught us anything, it's to just keep your mouth shut. That I honestly was expecting to see a week or so or 2 weeks later to see those guys press charges.
Yeah, and the tweets deleted.
Right. And the thing about that is that really, I mean, apparently the guy reached into Renzo's pocket, but I could see them making the argument, no, we were just legitimately asking for a cigarette and this guy beats us up. And then Renzo being a black belt, being an MMA fighter, I think they could have made a pretty good case that like, no, this guy's an animal and he just assaulted us. Right. So if you're getting mugged and you decide to fight back, probably not the best idea to start tweeting about it.
But thank you, Renzo, for keeping things interesting. Next news topic is the IBJJF. They started a lot of new tournaments this year. Toronto, Long Beach Spring Open, San Francisco Open, Atlanta Open, Boston, European No-Gi, Worlds, Masters, and Seniors, and the IBJJ Pro League. That's a lot of new tournaments to add in 1 year, and they're not stopping there. 2013 is going to be even more. What a great job of growing jiu-jitsu, not only regionally in America, but worldwide.
It seems like we've not reached this boiling point, but like reached the point where the growth is just going to go a lot, faster. And the cool thing is it's a bunch of different types of events too, right? It's not just a bunch of IBJJF clones. There's some different, rule sets and things out there.
Yeah. And I'm just wondering, what is the how many tournaments can you actually have in a year?
Right, that's the question, right? How much can the community support?
Yeah. But so far, so good. Every tournament, and this is the thing about the IBJJF. Some people criticize the fact that they only paid $5,000 per division for the IBJJ Pro League, a total of $20,000. But here's what the IBJJF is doing with the money that they're making throughout the year. They're holding more tournaments. And what that's doing is growing jiu-jitsu worldwide.
Right.
When you make a new tournament in a new city, it's not an instant moneymaker. The second year it's there, maybe you're going to have more people. But the first time, a lot of the tournaments that were in the city for the first time didn't do that well.
Right.
So they're doing a great job at spending their money building up the jiu-jitsu infrastructure.
Right, and I think it's important to note that, and I know this from having interacted with them, and from doing the whole IBJJF TV thing, they definitely put on tournaments with an eye for sustainability. They don't want to do one-off tournaments. They do a tournament in a new city. They say, we want to do this for the next decade or so. They think about doing that tournament for the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, it's very rare that they'll do a tournament in a city and not do it again in that city next year.
I'd imagine it'd have to bomb incredibly for them not to do it again.
Yeah.
And the same thing with the IBJJ Pro. I've read a lot of YouTube comments and whatnot of people saying, oh, they only paid $5,000, that's a crime. Yes, they only paid $5,000 now. But I can't help but think, given their track record with the regional tournaments, they're trying to think of the IBJJ Pro for the next 5 years.
Yeah, and so now that the IBJJ Pro League is around, it's based on points that you accumulate doing the regional tournaments. So all that's going to do is push more people to compete in these regional tournaments to qualify for the Pro League.
Right. I mean, there's been some arguments about rolling that into the Worlds or something like that, but either way, I can't help but think the IBJJF thinks that at least the paid system of getting the best guys to get some money for their efforts, I think that is definitely a facet that's going to stay.
Yeah. So great job for the IBJJF, helping to grow jiu-jitsu worldwide. Next news topic, this one happened just a couple weeks ago, Lloyd Irvin's BJJ Kumite. This was a tournament for brown belts only. He put out an invitation for brown belts worldwide to contact him, and a lot of tough guys showed up, competed in his tournament in Maryland, and the rule set was interesting. No reaping DQs. They just tell them to take their foot off. Brown belts only. no time limit,
No time
submission only. So there was a women's match that I looked at with Nigel Eastman. It lasted over an hour.
Yeah, I was going to say it went like 90 minutes, right?
Yeah, so that was really interesting. I'm not sure what he's doing with the footage, but I'm sure it'll be available on YouTube or something soon.
Jake, remember when the total time for like class and sparring was 90 minutes? Mm-hmm. Man, I can't imagine competing for that long.
Yeah. So great job, Lloyd Irvin, for shaking things up and giving the brown belts some love. You know, it's oftentimes black belts are the only guys that are really given much screen time, but he did a whole tournament for brown belts, so that was cool.
That's pretty brave, right?
Yep.
Because you think for an event like that, you'd be black belts and you put the best, you know, but taking the brown belts actually made it really interesting.
Right. And it's interesting to note that we still don't know who won it.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the most noteworthy things about that whole tournament was that not just that we don't know who won it, but there is surprisingly little information out about this thing even now.
Yeah, he did a great job at keeping the lid on that.
I mean, given the internet age, you can't even keep seminars quiet. I can't imagine what he had to do to keep that thing quiet.
Right.
I'm thinking armed guards.
And last news topic of the year, we actually had a poll on the Budo Facebook asking people what they thought the biggest news topic was. And here it is. Voted number 1, Metamoris. This was a tournament that took place here in Southern California, in San Diego. You and I went to it, Dane.
Yes, we did.
And there's a lot of interesting matchups. We had Kaio versus Jeff Glover, Otavio versus Crone Gracie, Rafael Lovato Jr. versus Kyron Gracie, Dean Lister versus Shanji, Galval versus Huron Gracie, Bushesha versus Roger. And, man, what a great lineup that was.
That was.
One of the ones that certainly caused the most discussion was Andre Galval versus Huron Gracie. There was no submissions in that match, but it was a big, everybody was talking about Huron's keep it playful movement.
I don't know how to comment on that. I mean, we've talked about these arguments. There's a lot of arguments either way.
There's both sides.
Right?
For sure.
On one hand, props to Huron for going out there against one of the most seasoned and well-conditioned competitors, not just at his weight class, but probably in the game period. Andre looked amazing at the Abu Dhabis. He looked great at all the other tournaments we saw him at, and Huron went in there and he didn't get completely trounced. You know, he actually played for a little bit. That said, I'm going to go out on the record and say I thought he played a little too defensive for my tastes.
Yeah, it was hard to root for Huron going in because there's not much footage of him competing. We got tons of competition footage of Andre Galval and virtually none of Huron. So most people did not think that he would be able to last 20 minutes. And the fact that he was a surprise to most people. That being said, it was a submission, quote, submission-only tournament. I say quote because you could still go the full time limit of 15 minutes and not have a submission. But the idea was to get the submission. And to see him not really try to get it, I think was a disappointment to a lot of people.
And you brought up a good point in saying that it wasn't a true submission-only tournament because there was a time limit.
Right.
And two, you brought up another point, and I don't know if you did this on camera. I think we did it at dinner, so sorry to call you out. But technically, both of them lost if they didn't submit. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, there was no winner since there was no submission. But, I think it was, looking back on it, that matchup was really interesting, and it's nice to have a wild card in there.
Right.
You look at a lot of the IBJJF events, and you get the same guys competing year after year after year. But to throw Huron Gracie in there, that was interesting. And I'm really curious to know what would happen if they were to compete again. I'm sure Andre would change his strategy completely.
Right.
But what would that be?
And Andre also called for Huron to compete again.
Yeah.
But under IBJJF rules.
Yeah. So it was a really interesting tournament. I was glad to see it. My big question is there going to be another one? We've seen these high-profile, highly paid tournaments in the past. This one has been the highest paid. Mm-hmm. But oftentimes they don't continue. This one was funded by a very wealthy guy, and most wealthy guys get that way by being smart with their money. And I don't know if they made money or not, but the place wasn't packed to capacity.
And that was actually kind of a surprise, as I expected it to be a bit more shoulder to shoulder than it was.
Yeah, it was fairly empty. But, again, a great show, and I hope that they're able to come back and to do a second installment in 2013.
Yeah, no, all of that said, I thought that we had this showcase, like, glitzy event for jiu-jitsu was nothing but good.
Yeah.
And everybody that decided to compete under those rules, under that, pressure and all that limelight, I have absolute respect for. Everybody put a bit more forward than maybe if they were, rolled into a larger tournament. So that's worth mentioning.
Yep. Okay, so those are the biggest news topics in the jiu-jitsu world in 2012. Now let's talk about some of the things that we here at Budo Videos have done in 2012. First off, we got IBJJF TV. That was a new show for 2012. We traveled all over the country visiting, filming episodes for the various IBJJF regional tournaments. Saw a lot of great matches, interviewed a lot of great guys. Let's take a look at a clip of IBJJF TV. It's a chilly morning here at St. Thomas College. We're in Houston, Texas for the IBJJF 2012 Houston Open. Today we're at Cal State Dominguez Hills for the largest and most prestigious kids jiu-jitsu tournament on earth. It's a cold and snowy morning here at Chicago State University where the Chicago Winter International Open is taking place. We're here at the picturesque City College in Harlem for the IBJJF New York International Open. We're here at the Sports Center Las Vegas for the IBJJF 2012 Las Vegas International Open. We're here at the University of Massachusetts for the 2012 Boston International Open. We're at the California State University of Dominguez Hills for the American Nationals. So that was a lot of fun to do. It's fascinating going around, seeing all the regional tournaments, because the Pan and the Worlds make a lot more sense. Mm-hmm. When you see how these guys are doing throughout the year, when some people might not even know, or somebody that got promoted to black belt that people aren't very familiar with, I'd seen them many times throughout the year, so it wasn't a surprise. So if you get a chance to go to any of the regional tournaments, IBJJF does a great job, and you'll definitely see some great matches.
How was it seen? I mean, because we all see the big events, like you said, but how was it seen, like, a group of smaller events? You know what I mean? Like a group of smaller regionals. Yeah,
it was fascinating. And you get to see guys that might not make it really far in the Worlds. You get to see them shine in their local region because they're better than anybody else in the region, but there might not be best in the world. So it was fascinating, absolutely.
Could you see stylistic differences between city and city, or
no?
It's all BJJ.
It's all jiu-jitsu.
Right.
So looking forward to more of that in 2013. Next up was Rolled Up. This is a show that started a couple of years ago, so not new for 2012, but certainly went to a lot more interesting locations this year. Let's take a look at a clip here. The editors, I think, had a lot of fun editing this together.
Oh, right.
There we are, Dracolino in Houston, and with his student, Brandon Mullins. Ouch.
Yeah.
Carlson Gracie Jr. in Chicago.
I love that this is going to be like a 1-minute segment of Budo Jake taking a beating.
Sinistro, that was fun.
I'm going with the least comfortable submission in the series.
Babs. Had a great interview with him on his episode of Rolled Up. Alliance, New York City.
Yellow wall pads, very brave.
And Sambo Steve in New York as well. When I think back of 2012 and all the episodes we did, my favorite one that we did, just based, I shouldn't say that, but the location was amazing, but also the people were great. I'm talking about Guam.
Yeah.
And we have a clip here. It's just such a beautiful place. If you ever get a chance to go to this island.
Nope, that's horrible. Don't want to go. Look at that. Hell on earth.
And I was shocked to see how popular jiu-jitsu is in this tiny island.
Is that Guantanamo?
Yeah. Nice warm waters, great food, friendly people. Great jiu-jitsu.
By the way, how far was the gym from the beach?
Like a 10-minute scooter ride. There's nothing more than 10 minutes away. You can go the whole island in less than an hour.
How is it training that heat and humidity? Does it take a little getting used to?
That took some getting used to. Louis Regis.
As you can tell, show your roll is in force in Guam.
Yeah. Mike Carbolito at the Carlson Gracie Guam gym. This is the purebred gym. Yeah, can't wait for another opportunity to go back to Guam. The other episode that received probably the highest view ratings was the one with Marcelo Garcia, of course. I mean, he's one of the best in the world, if not the best in the world by a lot of people's accounts. And have a clip here. This was fascinating. You know, his grip was incredible. And if we were to roll again, things would be a lot different. Of course, I'm going to get smashed. I'm going to get submitted over and over. But it wouldn't happen the same way. You know, after the roll, he showed me what I was doing wrong. Totally opened up my eyes to no-gi gripping.
Right.
But my eyes were closed when we started this match.
Literally, actually, I'm watching it right now. It's so cool that a guy that, you know, is such an avid competitor is so forthcoming with, you know, he's like, oh, this is how you would stop me.
Yeah. It was great to feel his guillotines and his north-south choke that he's so well known for. His forehead lift was interesting.
So let me ask you this, because I just saw it. What is his elevation like from butterfly?
Oh, his legs are so strong.
Right.
A lot of people don't know that, but you know, he rides his bike, I think, every day, and his legs are just like tree trunks. Marcelo north-south choke. That was great.
So like when he wraps from the back, can you feel the strength of his legs too?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Mental note.
In 2012, we broadcasted a lot more events than previous years. Actually, in ADCC, we started the ADCC in late 2011. That was in England. But we did the Abu Dhabi Pro Trials, the IBJJF Masters and Seniors tournaments. So did a lot more of the live broadcasts. It's just great that technology has come to the point where we can do these things and not have to wait for so long to come out with physical media. Multimatte was the big release of 2012. That was something that our crew was working tirelessly on because we were only able to show one mat in the past,
right.
But now suddenly we were able to show every single match, which was something that we really wanted to provide because a lot of the guys they don't want to watch Shanji Hibero. They want to watch cousin Jimmy, who's competing at the tournament. So it was great to be able to show everybody.
And this is something that hasn't been said, but I think it's important to note that when BudoVideos decided to do this, and I didn't have anything to do with this decision, the technology there was no pre-packaged solution to do this. It's not like you bought the Multimatte, Sony Multimatte package and you're like, oh, we got it now. BudoVideos in a lot of ways kind of had to invent this whole thing.
For sure.
And it was in development for a while, right, Jake?
Mm-hmm. Probably a full year. Took a lot of time and money to develop that, but thankfully we did. And here's a clip on the Multimatte.
BudoVideos.com will be bringing it to you live with our exclusive and groundbreaking Multimatte technology. You choose the mat that you want to watch. Presented like you've never seen before. Live with our exclusive Multimatte technology. All fights will be shown. Pan Jiu-Jitsu Championships, 2012 World Jiu-Jitsu Championships, 2012 Nogi World Championships, Masters and Seniors World Jiu-Jitsu Championships, exclusively at BudoVideos.com.
Then in June of 2012, we started this show, This Week in BJJ. And those first episodes looked a lot different than they do now. We took a lot of steps, again, made a lot of investing in the studio and cameras and lights and all this stuff to make it look like it does now. Let's take a look back at some of the early episodes of This Week in BJJ.
Hello and welcome to the first edition of This Week in BJJ. I'm Budo Jake, and this is a new weekly show where we'll be talking about current events in the Jiu-Jitsu world. And special guest, Homo Bahal, three-time world champion and a good friend of mine. How you doing today, Homo?
Doing great as well.
And we have our special guests here. First of all, Hoffa Mendes over here on the left, and Guillermo Mendez on the right. Great to have you guys here today.
Thank you. Thank you.
And special guest tonight, we got AJ Agazon, Eddie Bravo, a guy who I've learned a lot from over the years. One of the best guys in the sport, Bill Cooper.
What's up, everybody?
Orlando Sanchez, great having you here today.
Tonight we have a special guest, Halak Gracie. Well, Andres, I want to thank you for competing as much as you do.
Yeah, thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate that.
Man, Bishesh, I get so pumped up just watching you win the 2012 World Championships. How did that feel?
Man, it was like a great feeling because it was my first title as black belt.
And we got special guests today, Lloyd Irvin and his team. Starting on my left is Nigel Easton, Keenan Cornelius, JT Torres, DJ Jackson, Lloyd Irvin, and David Avalon. We're here with the creator of the Berimbolo, Samuel Braga. Sam, thanks for coming in today.
Oh, thank you for the opportunity.
Shanji Hibero, thanks for coming in today.
Thank you guys for having me.
Well, I got a Darce to triangle because there's a lot of strong necks out there.
BJJ, could you break down the Roger armbar that you got at Metamoris?
Yeah, sure. Let's do it.
I'm going to show a really good transition I like to do a lot from the basic choke, head and arm choke.
I'm gonna show what I like to do is De La Riva.
We're going to take a look at two different body positions from the double underhook pass. That's something that a lot of people ask me is how to defeat like the butterfly sweep with the wizard.
Thanks so much for coming in, Andre.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
So, Dan, we've done a lot of episodes of This Week in BJJ. What's been your favorite so far?
Oh, wow. I want to say all of them.
Put you on the spot, huh?
Yeah. Hard to make a decision because, I mean, Eddie Bravo was, I'm going to say that the Bravo Sean Williams episode was probably my favorite because there was a bit of contention leading up to that one between the Sean Williams guard and the rubber guard. And it was kind of cool. I almost felt like we were watching history happen. Not that they buried that hatchet, but they kind of, in a way, discussed and finally answered that question because they'd never really talked to each other about the differences in their guards.
Yeah. We're just bringing people together. That's all we're doing.
It's like love connection over here.
Yeah, that was a great episode, especially when we got to the mats and they were able to really hash things out and see the similarities and the differences between their systems. For me, the most memorable episode this year, they've all been great, but having the whole Team Lloyd Irvin in here was really interesting. Having one guest is interesting, but having a bunch of guys, that was a unique experience. And Keenan Cornelius is one of the most exciting competitors out there. And learning about how he went from a guy who was very talented but not winning many tournaments to a guy who's winning everything was fascinating. Here's what he had to say. Keenan Cornelius, as you mentioned earlier, we trained a couple years ago, and you made a big impression on me. We were both purple belts at the time, and I think you submitted to me about 5 times in a roll. And, I'm not the best in the world, but I usually don't get spanked like that. And I was surprised because I hadn't heard of you in competition before. Usually guys that are that good, you know their names because they compete a lot, but you hadn't been competing that much. And I asked you afterwards, and you said that you're not very good at competition. Mm-hmm. Well, a lot's changed in 2 years. Tell me about how that change happened.
Most of it, I think, was just a mental issue for me, and that's what I like so much about the team here is there's such a good mentality that gets instilled in us. And back then, that was 3 years ago, and I was competing quite a bit. I would always try and make it out to Pan Ams, and I competed at Pan Ams as a blue belt juvenile, and then Worlds at 2010 as a purple belt too. That was the Worlds that I was visiting my family. I was training at Gracie Baja there. I think I was there for a week, and then I did Worlds, but mostly it's just all mental, I think, and just having the right mindset and having the confidence in yourself. I used to have more confidence issues in myself, and also I wasn't in very good shape either. I didn't do any sort of external conditioning other than just rolling. I was just one of those guys just like to roll. I didn't really drill either. So when you're in a competition setting, you don't have that drilling or the conditioning to keep the pace high, you really feel it.
What are some concrete examples of how you improved your mindset?
Probably positive affirmations, just saying to yourself that you believe you're going to win. You believe in your training. You believe in your. It's not even at first when I first got there for the first year, I kind of had a hard time wrapping my head around it, and I was almost kind of resistant to it. But after the first year, I was still having problems in competition, but I saw myself improving in the room, and then that's when I really sort of just fell into the system more fully.
Tell them what your mantra for last year's season was.
For 2012 was, I'm the best purple belt in the world. I just have to go out and prove it. And at first, I didn't really believe it. I was kind of I don't know. I guess I was just felt like I was too like realistically minded or something. I was like, there's no way I could possibly be the best, right? And then after after Europeans is when I first started to like, I had started saying it before that just to like give it a shot, you know, because I didn't really believe in all of the positive affirmation masters, like call it the spooky stuff. It is kind of spooky when you start really believing in it. You really see the results. So I would say that every day I'm the best purple belt in the world. I just have to go out and prove it.
Master would make him chant in front of the entire class.
Yeah, when I first
just put that in.
Yeah.
We were all sitting in the back wall. And Keenan, stand up.
And if I had said it too quietly, I'd have to do it again, louder and louder, really say it with conviction, you know. So that kind of thing, like it just really gets you in the right mindset, and gives you that extra confidence boost, you know. And that's what I like too about the team, because it hasn't just made me a better competitor, it's made me a better person too, you know. Just believing in myself, and also just like these guys are like my family, you know. I hang out with them all the time, and that's what I love the most about it.
So again, all the guests that we've had on the show have been great, but that was the first time that we had a whole team in,
right?
And at least all the top guys from a team. So it was fascinating to get some inside information on how Lloyd creates champions.
Right. And they're one of those teams that made a lot of noise this year, so it's good to have them in.
Absolutely. Now, our friends, the Jiu-Jitsu Lab, they have a great blog out there. Just search Jiu-Jitsu Lab. They had a 2012 year in review, and they gave out some awards. And I was very happy to see that under Best Jiu-Jitsu Show of 2012, This Week in BJJ took first, and number 2 was Rolled Up.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So thanks a lot, guys. Glad you guys appreciate our efforts.
And read that whole article about all the awards he gave out, because he made some pretty astute, observations.
Mm-hmm. That was very well written. All their articles are.
Yeah.
Now there's a few athletes of the year that I want to talk about. We can't name everybody. There's so many guys that did incredible work out there on the mats in 2012, but there's a few that stand out that I'd like to draw your attention to. First one is, again, Lloyd Irvin, his black belt, DJ Jackson. He's done an incredible job of beating a lot of guys that have been tougher than him, and he doesn't have the widest of repertoires, but his half guard knee slide pass is unstoppable, as are his double leg takedowns.
And you gotta give it to him. If you see a DJ match, you know it's not going to be a stall fest.
Right.
He almost has a blatant disregard for his head.
Yeah, so aggressive.
And it's worth mentioning too that so he's often at a height disadvantage in any of his matches.
Yeah, this was at the Nogi Worlds 2012 here, where he took first place, beating Clark Gracie in the finals.
He looks like Valkhammer.
Yeah, so again, he's fighting guys that have been training way longer than he is. Great job this year, DJ Jackson. Next guy up is another Team Lloyd Irvin athlete, Keenan Cornelius. This is a guy that I've known for a long time since we trained a little bit together, but not most people did not know him as a purple belt, but everybody knows him now as a brown belt. He did an incredible job doing the Grand Slam of Jiu-Jitsu, doing all the major tournaments, getting double gold, getting a gold medal in his weight class and in the absolute, and almost always by submission.
I think it's worth mentioning too that Keenan is a pretty fresh brown belt, and B, that one of the questions when he went to brown belt was like, oh, he did great at purple belt, let's see how he does at brown.
Right.
It's some guys that are basically black belts, and he has come through in force.
Yeah. And a question that's on a lot of people's minds is, how is he going to do at black belt? And it's easy to draw a corollary to Crone Gracie,
right,
who killed everybody at brown belt and had a lot of trouble in his first couple years at black belt.
Right.
So is this going to happen to Keenan or not?
But I can't help but think, for both Crone and for Keenan, that black belt is a career unto itself. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So, both guys are pretty young. They have a long time to build their names as black belts.
For sure. Another guy that did great work in 2012 was Kai Otera. This guy is one of the lightest competitors in the world, walks around at 135 pounds, has a terrible diet, doesn't train strength and conditioning, but kills people on the mats.
Destroys.
So technical. Here he is against Rafael Freitas. His great leg attacks, an incredible guard. He's good from all positions. But in this day and age where you see guys that have an extensive supplement routine, taking all kinds of products, it's refreshing to see a guy like Kai Otera who obviously doesn't. He just relies on technique.
No, and And he is very vocal about the fact that, you want to get good at jiu-jitsu, do more jiu-jitsu.
Right.
And possibly Skittles.
This was probably the more interesting submission of the year. Cop lock, some people call it. Super fast ankle lock on Fabio Passos there.
I don't know if we have the American Nationals flying, full running sprint ankle lock.
That was the one that they just showed.
Okay.
And he also does absolute divisions, which for a rooster weight is pretty much unheard of. And not just doing absolute divisions, but winning them. Here he is beating Bruno Antunes.
And it's worth mentioning that the day before he competed against Bruno in the gi.
Yep.
So this wasn't just, his one-off victory. He did 2 days back to back, and he did really well on both days.
Yeah. So thanks for keeping things technical, Kyle. Next up is a guy who's been in the sport for a long time and was a guest on the show last week, Shanji Hibero. This guy seems to be getting better and better every year. Here he is at the Abu Dhabi Pro Trials, sweeping Homolo Bahal. And just, basic techniques.
Right. And, yes, he's getting better and better every year, but he was on fire this year.
Yeah. Flying armbar, come on. That's incredible. You don't see guys of his weight doing flying arm bars.
Right. And I remember seeing him at the Abu Dhabi Pro Trials in San Diego, and he was warming up. And, I mean, it's easy to say this, but I really, when I talked to him, went to take a picture, I was like, oh, wow, he's on a different level right now. From what I've seen, when he prepares, he's in it. He's locked in and he's ready to go. So,
yeah. And for a guy that's been competing that long, it's great to see him taking things as seriously as he is.
Yeah, definitely.
And next up is the 2012 year wouldn't be complete without naming this guy, Bushesha. He caused a huge stir this year.
Breakout competitor, I think, of the year.
Absolutely. So active, always looking for the finish.
And let's be real, he's a heavyweight, super heavyweight that rolls like a feather.
Yep.
Or a light featherweight.
Yep.
And I wonder if that pacing is what kind of throws guys off in his division, that they're just not used to that relentlessness and that kinetic energy that he brings.
Absolutely. His nickname Bushesha means cheeks. Apparently he was a chubby kid when he was younger. He's not chubby anymore. ...2012 double gold medalist.
And I can tell you, from having done the show and feeling him move, it's incredible to feel a guy that tall move like he does.
Absolutely. Really fun guy to train with.
Definitely.
Now let's talk about the best match of the year. Dana, are you in agreement with this one?
Yeah, 567%.
The World's 2012 Open Class match, Bushesha versus Rodolfo Vieira. A lot of people expected this match to happen maybe in the finals. It happened right off the bat in the Open Class. I don't think before the match happened anybody would have said that they expected Bushesha to win. Rodolfo was on a tear at that point. But if you haven't seen this match, you can see it in its entirety on YouTube. It's one of the best matches ever. Non-stop action.
I can't help but think that Bushesha went into the match that said, into that match, like, screw it. Almost as if he has nothing to lose, just throw it all out there.
Yeah.
He emptied the kitchen sink, the silverware drawer, most of his closet.
And it was a close match.
It was. He won it in the last 10?
Yeah, right at the end.
If fewer than 10. It could not have been more than 10 seconds left in the match when he got his final points.
I think everybody can't wait for the 2013 Pan or Worlds, wherever these two might meet up again.
And one more thing, and I have to mention this because I'm absolutely in love with this. You saw it in the background a little bit, but the stomping and the cheering when that match was going on was electric. If you can make it out to the Worlds, especially the finals for live, absolutely do it at least once in your jiu-jitsu career because the energy there is something else.
Yeah. And if you're a Checkmat competitor, join the Checkmat group, wear your t-shirt, cheer for your teammates. If you're a Gracie Baja student, do the same. Whatever team you're with, try to sit with the guys.
It is so cool to see the swaths of the stands wearing their shirts and cheering and everything. It's great.
Yep. You know, with the live broadcast, there's so much that you get that you don't get live. You get the commentary, the additional information about the guys, the ability to focus only on one match and not be distracted by others. But the one thing that is great about watching it in person is that chanting that goes back and forth and everything.
And I've heard reports. I'm not saying you have to do this, but there are reports of people doing both the live broadcast while attending live.
Yep, that's really the way to do it. Okay, it's that part of the show where I want to talk about the best products of the year. There's 3 products I want to talk about. The first one is the #1 selling DVD on Budo Videos in 2012. And this is one I know you have a copy of at home, Dean.
I cuddle with it. I fall asleep with it.
The Darcepedia by Jeff Glover. Jeff is a great teacher, a guy that's known for the Darce choke. And more than any other DVD set on the market, this one goes through so many different variations. And Dana, I know you were able to get a lot from it. You even pulled off one in competition.
I did. I pulled the Slars, the sleeve Darce in the gi with it. One of the most noteworthy things about it, though, is that not only does it teach you pretty much every detail that you need to know about the Darce, and actually, from the DVD begins with the basic Darce, and I'm like, I've got this. I've been doing the Darce, and then I see all of these adjustments, and I've been using that. But that's not even what I'm talking about. He also shows you variations of a few guillotine variations and the things to do when the Darce isn't present. That really rounds out. It makes, in a way, having the guillotine option makes the Darce and the Darcepedia a lot more rounded, and it makes me more confident to go for stuff because I'm like, I have options outside of this.
Yeah, you can't talk about Darces without talking about the guillotines. Guillotines and Darces are like cousins.
Right.
And when a Darce doesn't work, the guillotine's right there, and vice versa. So, yeah, you're right. Next up is the book of the year, best-selling book on Budo Videos. A lot of people might be surprised at this. It's not a jiu-jitsu book. It's a Sambo book. Samba Wrestling by Reilly Bodycomb. And I think that just goes to show that, you know, there's a lot of jiu-jitsu books out there. Kid Peligro came out with a bunch of them. Victory Built came out with a bunch of them. Not a lot on Sambo. So I think there's some thirst for some information on some good leg locks and some of the interesting rolling knee bars and takedowns that Sambo has. And Reilly Bodycomb trained a lot with Sambo Steve in New York, and he's an active competitor. Has a great leg lock and throwing game. Really nice looking book there. Samba Wrestling by Reilly Bodycomb. And Gi of the Year. You know, this one was probably the top-selling Gi of the year and also had such a great cause. We're talking about Shoyu Roll's Her Honor Gi. Great-looking Gi that came in women's sizes as well as men's sizes. That's a first for Shoyu Roll. And they did something really nice with a portion of the profits. They made a donation of toys to some charities, and also they wrote a $10,000 check to keep abreast.
And let's be honest here, especially with gi sales, $10,000 is a lot of money for gi sales.
Absolutely. And they didn't have to do that.
Right, and absolutely not. Also, we mentioned this last episode, but I got it from my lady Terry. I got one of the female sizes. And if you're a woman or if you're buying for a woman, really take a look at those sizes because Terry was really happy with the fit of the gi, and she owns another women's fit gi, and I think I know she prefers this fit to the other one. She wished she could apply that fit to the other gi. So
yeah. Most Shoyu Roll gis come and go so quickly. These we actually ordered extra, so we do have some of the women's cuts still in stock. So if you're a woman that's looking for a gi, can't go wrong with Shoyu Roll's Her Honor Gi. A couple more things to talk about in the show before we go to the mats. I want to take this moment to thank some of our sponsors. You know, of course, any of you guys that make purchases on BudoVideos.com, we appreciate your support. That helps us for sure. But there's also been some companies that have helped the 3 shows, Rolled Up, IBJJF TV, and This Week in BJJ. Those companies in no particular order are Control Industries, Tatami, Bull Terrier, Shoyu Roll, Defense Soap, Shock Doctor, and Ahi Tuna Jerky. All you guys have made all of our efforts possible, and we thank you for your support. There's a few other people I'd like to thank that have helped us out in 2012, and that is Sean Williams. He's always come in and done a rehash of the tournament the next week on This Week in BJJ, and also breaking down some of the techniques that we learned. Man, I've learned so much from Sean.
I always say it's hard to do a show with Sean, not because he's a difficult guest or a difficult co-host, but because I just want to sit back and just absorb. It's hard to participate when all I want to do is just absorb whatever he's giving.
Yeah. I forgot who it was, but somebody said it, and it's so true. There's a couple diamonds in America, and by that I mean guys that might not be at the front of most people's radars when they think of who to learn jiu-jitsu from. On the East Coast, you got John Danaher, guy who I've never trained from, but I hear great things about. And on the West Coast, we have Sean Williams. And everybody knows that Cobrinha is awesome, that the Mendez brothers are awesome. I could go a long list. But not a lot of people know how great of a teacher Sean Williams is, because he doesn't compete so much anymore. But he has answers for everything, and not just having answers, but being able to explain things in a very easy to understand manner. Great guy to learn from. Thanks for your help this year, Sean. Another guy is Caleb. He helps us out with the live broadcasts and also has his own show, the Fightworks podcast. I want to thank all the instructors that we've had on Rolled Up. Learned everything from all of you guys. And thank you for all the viewing that you guys have done. The show wouldn't be a show without all the viewers out there watching, making comments, downloading the shows. We appreciate your support. And again, all the customers at BudoVideos.com. Now, let's take a moment and talk about 2013, Dane. There's a lot of things to look forward to next year. First of all, ADCC is rumored to be in Sao Paulo. I don't think that's 100% sure yet, but if it is, we'll probably be doing the live broadcast, and that'll be interesting because a lot of people are surprised that I've never been to Brazil, and you haven't either.
I have not been to Brazil.
So hopefully you can go with us, and hopefully that happens. That'll definitely be a great event. We already talked about Worlds 2013. It's going to be fascinating to see what Buchecha has in store for us, and how hungry Rodolfo's going to be.
Doesn't 2012 seem like it set the perfect stage for this explosive 2013 Worlds?
Yep, for sure. Yuki Nakai is going to face De La Riva on Ground Impact, which is a Japanese jiu-jitsu event. That's going to be a great match to see. Apparently, this is the retirement match for De La Riva. They fought once before. Yuki Nakai won. Be interesting to see the rematch.
Very much a historical match.
Yep. Abu Dhabi Pro 2013 is going to take place in Abu Dhabi. That'll be, we always get the world's best. You know, they pay more than any other jiu-jitsu event, so they're going to attract the top level competition. We're looking forward to that. More Rolled Up episodes in 2013. Next episode in January is going to be with Robert Drysdale, and February is going to be Alliance headquarters in Georgia. We had Ian McPherson, Lucas Lepre, and Jacare. And then this is something new to a lot of the viewers out there that might not know about this, and that is Eddie Bravo is going to have an event on March 30th. It's an event that we're going to do a live broadcast of. It's called the Sub-Only Worlds, which, can you guess that rule set?
I'm going to go with points only.
Yeah, so it's sub-only. No? I think it's 20 minutes matches, maybe 15. We're going to have to clarify that. But 155 pounders only lightweights.
Okay.
Interesting to note that he's not using the IBJJF weight class, he's using the UFC weight class. So it's 155 pounders. And the winner of the 16-man tournament is going to win $20,000.
Holy crap, go Eddie.
Yeah, that's a lot of money for a brand new event. So that should bring out some of the best lightweights in the world.
Yeah, I mean, Eddie's one of those guys that you got to give to him. He promotes jiu-jitsu through less than the common means. You know what I mean? Like, he does the whole thing. He pushes jiu-jitsu through MMA, and he gives a nice depth to the community.
Absolutely. Knows how to shake things up. We're going to keep you guys updated, as always, on this show with when more information comes out about that. But that pretty much wraps up 2012.
More Rolled Up episodes, right?
Yep. Already talked about that. Drysdale Alliance. And there's even more things that I'm not at liberty to discuss quite yet, but suffice to say, 2013 is going to be awesome.
I tried, guys. I tried.
So we're going to have another show next week, and then we're going to take a couple weeks off. I'm going to be in Japan, but we'll be back at the end of the month in January. But anyway, we'll be back next week. We'll talk more about that. Before we go, we're going to go to the mats in a moment, and my good friend Ben Kim, who trains with Nino Shembri, he's a black belt there and an instructor at his academy, is going to show us a nice technique. So don't go anywhere, guys. We're going to be right back on the mats with Ben Kim.